How do we maintain centeredness when the world seems to be pulling our attention in a million different directions? We take control of it. Does it seem like the world is more chaotic than it's ever been? Well, maybe it is. Maybe you, like many people, are concerned about the safety of your family, the long term well being of your children in a world that seems to be getting more and more disordered. Today, I want to share with you some perspectives that I've gained after 27 years of working in plant medicine space, where experiences that on the outside look very chaotic, but as you take a step back, you understand that there is an amazing order that's happening. And I would like to suggest to you that that is actually what's happening in our world today. So, how do we find order in the midst of chaos? Well, with this channel, there are really only two main tools that we use to shift the quality of our lives, and those are intention and attention. How can intention and attention be the only two tools that we use to shape our lives to bring order into chaos? Well, that's really all that there is, my friends. Everything that you see in this world, everything that we experience, was formed through applied intention and attention. Sure, things came out of the imagination. There is this intangible space where ideas arise from, but it is the fuel of our intention and attention that bring all of those ideas into being. And that's not just the tangible 3D material world, that's the experiential world that's actually happening all inside of us. And so, while it can seem really disempowering, I know when we see what's going on in the world, what you find as you gain this perspective that all you have is intention and attention, then you find that you are far more powerful than you ever imagined yourself to be. So, this has shown up for me in so many different ways. Like I said, I've worked with so many different people from all walks of life in the plant medicine space, and most all of them have come to the work because they felt like in some way their life was in chaos. And an interesting component of this work is that very often it manifests as chaos and then distills down to order. And one of the things that I've learned over the years working with these medicines and these experiences is that they are really just a microcosm of our macrocosmic world. What people experience within their journey work is little more than a amplified expression of what their daily life is. A lot of that's running in the background. They don't realize that. There are certainly things that are going on far beyond our imagination that we can encounter and that can be brought to light. And indeed, those things can seem chaotic when they first arise. And with time and processing, intention and attention, then we can help bring order to those chaotic experiences. So the plant medicine space is incredibly valuable on a multitude of levels, one of which, and perhaps one of the most important being, is that they allow us to experience our life in this concentrated manner, and then we can apply that knowing to how we live going on after those experiences. So that aside, it shows up outside of that space as well. It shows up when we're 4 years old. I've got a 4-year-old daughter who in the last 6 months has started to realize that her mother and father will die, that she herself will die. And this is often, I think, one of our first existential confrontations with this idea of chaos. And so chaos really is described as anything that brings disorder into our lives. For my daughter, her order, her expectations, the pattern that she has believed to be just, the way things work, is that she wakes up, mom and dad are there, we get her dressed, we make her breakfast, we take her to school, we pick her up, we have a night, we have the weekend, we're always there. And when this realization comes that, well, we won't always be there, it creates chaos internally. Even though everything outside looks exactly like it has all along, internally she is experiencing this disorder that's bringing uncertainty and fear. And I would argue that it's not a lot different than what we experience when we see world events happening that create this kind of existential or perceived existential threat in our lives. Another interesting perspective on this is that there are those who their lives seem disordered. They are in the midst of great turmoil, whatever that might be. Maybe it's a divorce, maybe it is something as simple as a work confrontation, and yet they maintain their composure. They have an internal coherence that displays order in the midst of chaos. Now, in both of these instances, you'll see that if allowed, the person who is experiencing chaos internally, despite there being order and structure on the outside world, that person can actually bring chaos to the outside world. And similarly, the person who is experiencing order in the midst of a chaotic world can bring order to the outside world. This is where intention and attention become really valuable for us to consider. It originally starts inside of us. I hope we can all see that. And of course, like in this conversation, this is not to deny that things happen outside of our ability to control. There are horrific experiences. I have worked with people who have been subject to abuse and trauma that I would never even utter. It's so horrifying. And yet, those individuals, after years of deep work with intention and attention, are able to find that those experiences actually, in a much, much larger context, distilled into an order that helped them understand their life and their place in this world so much better. There's a phenomenon called the overview effect, and this is when astronauts go out into space and they look back at the Earth and they see how amazing and beautiful and orderly it is. It is one organism functioning. And it's a similar approach or similar perspective that we can take in our lives. You can see the world around you and feel understandably like everything is in total chaos, and were you to get on that spaceship and you to go into outer space and sit back from the moon and look at the Earth, you'd see that there's actually order and beauty there, despite what's going on down in what then would be the microcosm of that macro perspective. Same thing in our lives. If you're experiencing chaos in your immediate life, you can take on the perspective through your intention and attention of stillness, of observation, of finding some kind of order in that chaos. Now, I grew up in a pretty chaotic environment. It's, like many, it has been, it's contributed to some adulthood struggles that thankfully I've come to a really healthy place around. That has been because I have allowed myself to continuously take on a perspective of trying to understand and apply intentional order. I know that this can be really challenging for someone who's in the midst of chaos and they think that this sounds like a bunch of spiritual bypassing and that, you should be fixing things out in your life. But the reality is you can fix all the things in your life. And just like my 4-year-old, a thought, just a simple thought, a what if, a realization can take and turn your entire ordered, controlled world into an internal chaos. So what is it that we do? How do we maintain a sense of stability? How do we maintain centeredness when the world seems to be pulling our attention in a million different directions? We take control of it. So, another thing I'm always going to be speaking to. Now, anybody I work with, this is central to the work that you must do. And this is central to the work that happens with any therapist or any kind of personal development environment. But, I think it's particularly helpful to look at it through the lens of therapy because that's our go-to. That's how we oftentimes think that we're going to put order to a chaotic life is by going to a therapist. And of course, it helps. There's value there with a good therapist. They provide a structured container where you can come in and explore your chaos and hopefully distill it down to some kind of order. But there are three factors that are taken into consideration or that are part of your success with a therapist. One is your relationship and trust with a therapist. That accounts to about 40% of the progress that you will make. The other 40%, or another 40%, I should say, is completely credited to how much work and devotion the individual puts into changing their mindset, to changing their perspective. Only about 10 to 15% is really attributed to therapeutic modalities, CBT, DBT, all the things that, we can apply. There's like, I'm not saying that those tools aren't great. They obviously are. I've worked with many of them, and I've found them to be greatly valuable, but they're only valuable because I work and apply them. They're only valuable because I have someone who I can confide in and I have a trusted relationship with that allows me to honestly, deeply explore my chaos and feel safe. So, what does this look like? All right, so I want to kind of just give us a moment. Like I said, this is not going to be a real long video. I want to just take some time right now to share with you not even share with you. I want to take a moment and spend it with you in bringing some coherence and some order to our individual selves. And if you'll just stick with me here, it's going to be a brief, we don't even have to call it a meditation. We can just call it an awareness practice. And as we start to kind of move into a space of a little more stillness, I'm going to give you just a minute to just be wherever you are. And you can be driving your car. You can be cooking dinner. I listen to a lot of YouTube videos while I'm cooking dinner. You can be taking a walk. It doesn't really matter. Whatever you're doing, you can be sitting still, silently with your eyes closed. And all that this takes is using the power of your awareness to come back into the center of your being. Start in your chest. Move it down into your solar plexus. And as you do that, you may even become aware of how your body starts to shift in posture. Something that we lose sight of, and many of us never even become aware of it, is that we are energy before we are physical. That our physical bodies are a manifestation of an energetic force. You can call it spirit, you can just call it energy, or you can just completely disbelieve it. But its reality isn't in need of your belief to be real. We are energy. Energy, all matter is energy condensed into a vibration. So this doesn't have to consider past lives, future lives, heaven or hell. This is right here, right now, in these bodies that we are, not knowing what we are other than human beings having a human experience. And bringing our awareness into our individual self, our physical bodies, our physical spaces, no matter what's going on around us. Right now, outside of my home, the wind is tumultuously blowing all about. I could allow that to pull my awareness in many different directions. And I'm choosing through my own intention and attention to be right here within my own being, and inviting you to do the same in the moment. If you're cutting vegetables or navigating traffic, Being subject to chaos is ultimately being pulled out of the moment. It's being pulled out of the what ifs, or into the what ifs, I should say. Out by the what ifs. I'm reflecting on an instance where I had someone have a medical emergency in front of me, and there was a great number of people around. And some of them panicked, and some stayed centered. And those who stayed centered and in the present moment were the ones who could help the situation. Those who immediately went to the what ifs, to the reactionary state, contributed to the chaos. You have an enormous ability, enormous power to bring order into your world by bringing order into yourself. We can work through 100 different techniques and tools. All of them are focused on attention and attention. So we can just shortcut that if we want to. We can have the intention to apply our attention to this moment, to being present fully. And that way we can be of service to the moment. We can bring order to the chaos. We can be the change that we want to see in the world. We'll come back to this topic many times. It's one of the most important that arises in our lives. All of us, definitely myself included, get pulled in a multitude of directions. Fears arise. What ifs arise. It's only natural. But through repeated practice, intentional practice of using our attention to be present in the moment, that can become more of our present daily reality. And through that, we can help others find peace and chaos in a tumultuous world.